Hello and welcome to Food Freedom Milwaukee Radio. I'm your host, Quinn Wilder. You are listening to community radio at River West Radio Milwaukee, WXRWLP 104.1 FM. Again, I'm Quinn, and this is Food Freedom Milwaukee Radio, where we are talking about what the nonprofit, which is about 1 year old now, that we started a year ago, called Food Freedom Milwaukee, and which really has as a mission that kind of coincides with the radio show that started a couple years ago here, which was originally called Healthy Food in the 53212, which is really about asking the question and exploring possible answers and solutions to the question, what is the value of trying to create our own healthy, local, sustainable, just food system in and around the neighborhood of River West, including neighborhoods like Lindsay Heights, and Harambe and Borchard Field. So definitely including 53212, a lot of neighborhoods in there, and 53206. And over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of guests on. We've talked about things that Food Freedom has been doing as it has been kind of defining its focus and its mission, and finding projects to help really implement the solutions that we've been exploring on this show about building that healthy local food system for ourselves. Given that, and this has been part of some of our analysis from some of our guests, given that we know that the existing mainstream profit-driven food system does not serve us well, does not meet our basic human right to access to healthy food. We've talked about how this works in our school system that results in food that's so disgusting that kids can't even eat it. People are complaining about kids throwing food out, but when you look at that food, you really can't blame them. Talking about waste in our food system in general, and talking about community gardening as a solution. So one of the big emphasis areas for Food Freedom has been learning how to support community gardens and understand what community gardening is about, how they are working, who is running these, what are community gardens' challenges, what are their successes, and are there areas where if they got a little bit better support, a little bit deeper support, that what could they do differently? How much more of an impact could they have? So we have gone out and found about 8 partners, 8 community gardens in the 53212 and 53206 area codes or zip codes, and each one we found is at has different needs, has different challenges, is unique, is at different stages in their development and growth and ability to meet their goals or define their goals, and particularly unique in the success that they've had in meaningfully engaging residents around the community garden to get involved, to grow food. And we have found things like revelations such as, given that there's all this talk about food deserts, food security, and hunger, particularly, of course, in our low-income neighborhoods, but in middle-class neighborhoods as well, our middle-class households, middle-income households. We experienced during the pandemic, people from median income households on down needing to go to food pantries. I've known people who have worked in food pantries and even started food pantries in order to try to address the hunger issues that were happening when there were food shortages during the pandemic that were just pandemic driven. but also because of people losing jobs and having their income go way down, having trouble being able to afford food, any kind of food. So, taking all those experiences and looking at community gardens, the idea, of course, is can we grow our own food to sustain ourselves? Can we engage schools and help schools and communities be able to grow at least some, even small percentage of food that would really give people food sovereignty and access to nutritious food? But that it's just not just about access, but it's also about food knowledge. So I've had experiences of nonprofits giving bags of produce from gardens, local produce from local gardens, to people passing by in the neighborhood. And I've heard the observation from others in the neighborhood that that strategy does not seem real wise or effective, just because the assumption there is that there is food knowledge. In other words, that people are going to know what to do with that food and are going to use it. When in actuality, it's common that food knowledge is so low and people have become so dependent on processed food that it's more likely that beautiful bag of delicious, nutritious, fresh, organic and non-pesticide, or chemical-free food is just going to get thrown out as a result of low food knowledge. So you can have access without knowledge. Now, of course, that's just like periodic access, and it would probably be food knowledge would be more likely to increase if access was consistent rather than sporadic. But still remains that food knowledge has to go right along with access and maybe even come first where possible. So we have organizations such as Food Right. Lisa Kingery, I believe, started Food Right some years ago, and that is a beautiful program. I've gone and volunteered there, and they and Leslie Krieger is involved, and many others. And they are teaching kids how to prepare healthy meals. So they focus a lot on cooking and nutrition. So they're really building food knowledge with kids. And to me, the next step and a really incredible thing to be able to do would be to have a school garden, and maybe it's a school garden that's also a community garden, that produces enough food to provide even some low percentage of even just sporadic snacks or parts of meals, but where that food is really guaranteed to be chemical free and healthy and nutritious and fresh. So we've explored all these things on this show, and I want to talk a little bit about where food freedom is at now. The whole part of dealing with our food system has also led food freedom to look at native ecology and look at how, if we can work with nature, we can engage nature to work in service of health, not just for humans, but for pollinators, other insects, for cleaning our air and our water and our soil. And the potential of that cannot be ignored. So the idea of food for pollinators and people came out of that idea. Food Freedom started its own native plant nursery last year and grew 5,000 plants in that nursery, some of which ended up in yards and gardens in 53212 and 53206. One way was through partnerships with nonprofits and other organizations and businesses. We put an installation in at Kumba Juice and Coffee. Go check it out in their courtyard and the outer perimeter of the building, in partnership with the owner of that building, Riverworks. We put a few gardens in with the help of the youth of the organization We Got This, which is a youth gardening organization centered at 9th and Ring. We then had a offering to build awareness and education and participation in River West, given that there was a Eco Harambe initiative happening that the city was offering, but they were not able to engage, help us start a Eco River West neighborhood initiative. So Food Freedom created its own version and offered a limited number of free front yard native garden installations. And this was a really beautiful process that happened this summer, where we ended up with about 10 front yard homeowners that had front yards where they wanted a garden, and we had them work with us. Volunteers came out, and we taught all the homeowners at Kumba at a meeting how to design their garden. We got them help with professionals or semi-professionals or very knowledgeable amateurs in native plant design, native garden design, to work with them. And then they took their plants from the species list they developed, and we came out, and volunteers came out, and other people that were participating in receiving front yards also came to other people's houses to help do the plantings, and that was a really cool process. So there's now a bunch of front yard native plant gardens added to the existing number in River West. And our next iteration of that is going to be is starting up in about a week. Actually, we have offered through social media to neighborhoods in 53206 and 53212. We have offered anybody to let us know if they're interested to participate as a cohort in a supported and guided process that starts with designing your garden space, prepping your garden space, developing a species list for your designed garden, collecting seeds together based on what's on the species lists, doing winter sowing, so everyone will get what they need in order to do winter sowing in their yards over the winter to turn those seeds into sprouts, to pot up those sprouts. We're then going to have a fundraiser for Food Freedom Milwaukee, a plant sale, a spring plant sale for the excess plants. Then we're going to do plantings either in the spring or the fall, and everyone that's participating will end up with their own native plant garden that they designed and got help with along the way. So far we have probably about 6 or 7 that have said they were interested, and we could take probably 7 or 8 more at least. So if you're listening out there and you're interested, contact me at quinn@foodfreedommilwaukee.org. And you can check out our website for more information, or Instagram or Facebook or our YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel in particular has a lot of great curated videos about either there's a section that's about growing food, and there's a section that's about native plants. And I encourage you all, if you're interested, to go check that out. So normally we have a guest on this show most of the time. This time I just wanted to talk through some of the updates. There is also, we don't have a guest today, but I wanted to let you all know that we just dropped our 3rd newsletter. That just came out, and you can get it on our website. And again, you can, I'm trying to remember if I posted a link to it on social media, but definitely go to the website, and also make sure you're subscribing on Instagram and Facebook. The Instagram is Food Freedom MKE, and that's the YouTube channel handle as well. And we're on Facebook as well. So check that all out. So I want to back up for a second. I know we all know there's a lot of crazy things happening in politics these days. And, I know that there's also just a flood of misinformation and disinformation that's out there. I keep hearing about how if a random young person were to, who grew up during the pandemic and is now watching democratic institutions and rights crumble in our current environment here, which has just been devastating to me as a person who has been trying to work for and also learn about and study politics and democratic institutions and the progression and building of human rights, of our history, of what it's taken to gain these rights and to watch them start to disappear has been absolutely devastating. The right on that list, one of the rights that relates to food freedom directly, is obviously the right to healthy food, the right to an opportunity for health. When we talk about the right for health care, for example, healthy food is, to me, part of that. And so that's kind of the connection I'm making when I brought in my outlook to thinking about what's happening politically and how that's connecting to people's ability to have a voice, to have influence, and to really exercise their basic rights. And so when we ask the question, what does building health really, what does that mean? What does that really look like? And we go to one of the answers when we focus on food with things like community gardens. I want to back up a little bit and think about how we really don't only want to be looking at that one little piece of the puzzle. We have to look at all of it and be part of all of it. And so what does it mean to build health in the neighborhoods in our focus area around River West and Harambe? What does it mean? What does building health really mean and look like? So yeah, it can mean having community gardens. It can mean growing native plants and getting rid of invasive plants and having our ecology be healthy in order to support human health. But there's also physical health, and you could say that is linked to community gardens, in that running a community garden usually involves getting a lot of exercise and doing a lot of physical work. But what about physical health more broadly? And then what about our social health? So that's, again, can be linked to community gardening because you work with other people in your neighborhood. You get to know people in your neighborhood. Your neighborhood can end up being safer because people know each other and are more likely to look out for each other. But there are also forces that can overwhelm that, where we have things like crime and gun violence that really jeopardizes our ability to have safety in our neighborhoods. And then when we think about health, building health, it also means having that, realizing that basic human right to clean air and clean water. And we know that, of course, a healthy native ecology supports that. But if you're living, as we are, in neighborhoods that have a legacy of manufacturing, that there are still a lot of toxins flowing in our water, flowing underground, in the air, in the dirt, and some of which are even still operating and putting toxins into the air. So having a lot of native gardens may not be enough. We also have to do the work of figuring out how to do things like get corporate accountability and shut down, engage our government institutions, such as the EPA, for example, or the DNR, and the departments of health, to stand up for people and to protect citizens from exposure to deadly chemicals, for example. And so there's a lot of work that's really a lot bigger than just having community gardens and planting native plants. That needs to be done, that really all connects together. So, how do we build health? How do we build community? I think if we expand beyond just community gardening and we just think about building community, I think that's a good place to start, because once we're building community, we now start gaining the capacity as a group, as groups, to have a stronger voice, to learn together, and also to create our own access, to create our own rights and our own access to the things that we need to not only survive but thrive. So when we think about successes in the past, when we think about what was happening during the civil rights movement, and there were groups that were taking it upon themselves to build their own systems to create and support health and rights for individuals. You know, I think about how the Black Panthers started having their own meal programs, and they said, we can feed the people. The government's not doing it. It's not providing healthy food. It's just food that makes people sick. It's maybe insufficient amount of food anyway, and we need to do this ourselves. And they figured out how to do it. They were providing healthy meals to communities, and particularly for school children. They were having morning meals and they were having dinners, and these were meals that were nutritious. So this was a really powerful part of what the Black Panthers did, because it was a statement that, you know, we can take this upon ourselves. And I think that's what we're doing when we are engaging in and trying to and supporting community gardens, where we can collectively grow food and we can together build food knowledge, and even do canning and food preservation, and teach each other recipes and cooking, and make meals together, and create our own access to healthy food in the process. When I go and I think about other influences that have gone into my own analysis and understanding of what it takes to build health, I think about what it takes to build democratic institutions that give people a voice and the opportunity to have influence, even in a wealthy country that is privatizing everything that can possibly be privatized, where there has just been an increase in concentration of wealth globally as well as locally, and how that concentration of wealth has eroded people's ability to have a voice, and has eroded people's rights, has eroded institutions of democracy, even including our justice system, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I think about what has influenced me in understanding that. It really started for me back, I think, learning certainly about MLK, and then learning that MLK had it, and his nonviolence approach had roots from him studying Gandhi. And Gandhi had developed this nonviolence approach. This is really relevant right now, as we have people trying to stand up to ICE, stand with immigrants, and anybody that's being threatened with deportation or threatened with having their rights taken away, which is now happening all over the country and right here in Milwaukee, and certainly more recently has been happening with a lot of intensity in Chicago, where the mayor of Chicago, I was not aware of the mayor of Chicago until recently, but wow, what an incredible individual. If you haven't seen him talk, go check him out. But, you know, Gandhi was into communal living. He started what was called an ashram, which is kind of like a commune. And it was based on a principle of kind of a interdependence and a which cultivated a high social morality, which I think is something that we've been losing, this idea of a high social morality, whether it's religious based or not. This is something that we need to get back, and I think the idea of building community is what was operating with Gandhi's commune, that we can start to get back by doing collective activities with our neighbors. And so this does bring us right back to community gardens um, as just one of the ways that community gardens can help address some of the crises that we're experiencing in our society currently, including fighting against concentration of wealth, business and capitalism-based interests, where government seems to even be afraid to stand up for people in the face of powerful capital interests. And this is really what we're fighting when we're talking about even just building our own healthy food system. But so far at Food Freedom Milwaukee, we have seen people come together, and we've seen people grow food together, and we've seen people build community, donate their time and their expertise to make our neighborhood stronger and more resilient and healthier in a whole variety of ways, not just by trying to grow some food in a raised bed somewhere, but by helping each other out, by wanting to learn together, by offering anything that they can in an altruistic way to just benefit others. And this is really the dream of Food Freedom. It's been really heartwarming to see how people have come out and gotten really invigorated by our mission and feel like this is something that they agree with, that they also think is needed and is a solution and a remedy to what we've been experiencing in the world. And so I look forward to seeing you out there. You can go to in some of our community projects where we call our volunteers out and invite people to sign up and get involved. So we just came out with that newsletter. I encourage you to check it out, read up on what we've been doing. If you go to our website, there's an interest form link, and you can click on that and fill it out and let us know what you're up to, what you're interested in, what you'd like to do, what you can offer. And then also donate. We rely on fundraising. We just had some plant sales and are doing some front yard installations for private folks who are paying about a market rate. And that all goes into our fund to support our work. So please go check it out. Look at the projects we've been doing. Sign up on our interest form. Come out to our events. Think about joining this cohort and getting help designing and installing your own native plant garden. We're going to be one of the first things we're going to do is start doing seed collecting, because it is native plant seed collection time right now. There are some great spots around the city that we can go and learn to identify the native plants that we want to get and how to pick and harvest the seeds from those plants. It's a really fun thing to do. I want to encourage anybody's interested in this to come on out with us and check it out and learn more about native plants and winter sowing. Let's get some more native plants in the ground in our neighborhoods, and let's start really building health from the ground up. Well, that's the end of our show. I want to thank everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks.